Here too is masquerade, I find, as everywhere the dance of mind. I grasped a lovely masked procession, and caught things from a horror show. I'd gladly settle for a false impression, if it would last a little longer though. If you're familiar with the history of philosophy, you will probably have heard of a French philosopher called René Descartes. In fact, if you're a student of mathematics too, then the name may also ring a bell. But even if you've never come across him before, I suspect that most of you would have heard of his famous dictum, "I think, therefore I am," or, in its Latin formulation, Cogito Ergo Sum. But what exactly does it mean? The phrase is first introduced in Descartes' 1637 treatise Discourse on the Method, but the finest explanation of its meaning comes in a later book by Descartes in 1641 titled Meditations on First Philosophy, in which the existence of God and the immortality of the soul are demonstrated. This work is widely regarded as one of the first works of modern philosophy, a canon of thought beginning in the 17th century, characterized by Renaissance humanism and its move away from classic scholasticism. In the Meditations, Descartes begins, "Some years ago I noticed how many false things I had accepted as true in my childhood, and how doubtful were the things that I subsequently built on them." We can all relate to this mistake to some extent. As a very trivial example, perhaps as children we believed in the tooth fairy, and subsequently came to believe that one's total income for the year is money made plus number of teeth lost. Of course, now with maturity and the benefit of hindsight, we can say that the belief and the resultant beliefs constructed upon it were erroneous. It's fairly easy to do this, and I'm sure that we can all think of several benign examples. And yet, as much as we can look back in retrospect and see how wrong we were about certain things, it is difficult to do so in the present. As we cannot know all of the things that we were wrong about, we must in turn doubt whether our current beliefs are built on falsehoods. Moreover, just like we now view some of our previous beliefs as wrong, we are sure to do the same to some of our current beliefs in the future. So how do we know what things we're wrong about now? Well, once in a lifetime, Descartes answers, everything should be completely overturned and I should begin again from the most basic foundations if I ever wish to establish anything firm and durable in the sciences. So his ambition is a grassroots epistemic project, and as he cannot be sure as to which of his beliefs are correct, he must discard them all and begin from the bottom, accepting only things that he can be fundamentally sure of. In other words, he must first decide what foundations of knowledge he can use. He writes, "Everything that I accepted as being most true up to now, I acquired from the senses or through the senses. However, I have occasionally found that they deceive me, and it is prudent never to trust those who have deceived us, even if only once." So how have his senses deceived him? Well, he argues, there are three main ways in which this can happen, all of which are built on the daunting revelation that our sensory faculties can, and in fact regularly do, lead us to believe something false. First, through the fallibility of human perception. Sometimes we see things that are not really there, in other cases we see things but not as they really are. Optical illusions are a good example, images designed in such a way to highlight the suggestibility and in many cases error of sense perception. Take this image, where both monsters are in fact the same size, even though it looks as if though one is larger than the other. Alternately, consider this day-to-day example, where due to physical phenomena, the submerged pencil appears at a disconnect with its base. Auditory tricks, subliminal messages, and spatial illusions all show us that our perception is not always a useful tool when gauging the details of reality. As C.S. Lewis remarks in his Chronicles of Narnia saga, what you see and what you hear depends a great deal on where you are standing. The second way in which our experience of the world can be mistaken is through illusion. Perhaps you are watching this video on your phone, for example, while sitting on the sofa and drinking a nice cup of, Earl Grey tea. As much as our perception is not always accurate, surely you cannot be wrong about the fact of what you are doing. Well, Descartes winces, sorry but no, for we could still be in a dream. How often does nocturnal quietness convince me of familiar things? For example, that I'm here, dressed in my gown, sitting by the fire, when I'm really undressed and asleep in my bed. And similar to noticing one's own falsehoods of belief, it is hard to tell a dream is a dream whilst you are experiencing it. So even in the most lucid of cases, we cannot be sure of what is actually the case. As Edgar Allan Poe laments, all that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. However, he contends, can we not be sure in the simplest of concepts? Consider dream entities, let's just say a table in a dream. A rendering of it, albeit a subconscious rendering of it, greatly relies on our familiarity with the real-life physical object of a table and the real concept of a table that we associate with it. Even fictional entities are just blends of real concepts. A unicorn, for example, is just a compound of a horn and a horse. So as much as these composite things are still to be doubted, we can still believe simple and universal things, such as time and spatial properties like dimension. But, and this is the third way in which our experience of reality can be mistaken, there is the chance of a metaphysical deception. God might not trick us, sure, but we can imagine that we have fallen prey to the machinations of an evil demon, whose every efforts are spent in deluding us as to what is and isn't the case. This eventuality casts doubt on our knowing of arithmetic and other base notions, so unfortunately we can't rely on them either. It seems there is no end to illusion. But Descartes manages to salvage this dire situation. For as much as a physical reality might not exist, he can be sure of the fact that he is thinking. Even if Descartes' demon, as it is known, is deceiving him, there must still be a him for the demon to deceive. The I is essential in the process of doubt, and so he concludes, it must finally be stated that the proposition I am, I exist, is necessarily true when it is stated by me or conceived in my mind. Or in other words, I think, therefore I am. Basically, he concludes, that at the very least we can say that we are a thinking thing. Of course, Descartes goes on to ruminate on what this I can be, to discuss the nature of extension, God and existence. But these are all topics worthy of separate videos. You may not want to take Descartes' skepticism as far as he does at the start of the Meditations, but it's an interesting exercise, and one should constantly be aware of both the fallibility of our perception and the fact that our beliefs can and often are mistaken. The day-to-day solution to this is to keep our beliefs open to revision. As Jane Austen wisely stated, seldom, very seldom does complete truth belong to any human disclosure. Seldom can it happen that something is not a little disguised or a little mistaken. And that, I'm afraid, is the end of the video, and I hope that you now understand what the famous phrase means, and get just how, and more importantly, why it is argued for in the way that it is. If you enjoyed this video, by the way, please drop a like below. And if you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Keep notifications on to be notified when we release a new video. In the meantime, thank you again for watching.